Blog Talk Radio.
Coming to you with a great, important message from our students. They're concerned, my friends. Maybe some of you out there who are calling in today, or those of you who are on our chat line, it is open. So if you would like to talk to me by chat, just writing in, just go right ahead and log in to blogtalkradio.com/student to teacher, and you'll be able to reach me by chat line. But for those of you who are coming on and wish to talk to me live today, you are so welcome to share in this important discussion about student loan debt. I'm just getting overwhelmed with students calling in and discussing that they have learning disabilities, mental health issues, emotional challenges, and they're stuck with large student loan debts and have gone through the process of asking schools to help them so that they can retest or get tutoring assistance, and sometimes that has not happened. Now, I have to give kudos to the schools that are out there and doing the right thing. I worked myself for Disability Student Resources, and I understand that there are times when students do not follow the rules, do not take responsibility for reading what is given to them. Now, I'm talking about adult students, adult learners. I'm talking about you student veterans out there. You sit in front of an advisor at a college or at a job training program, and you make an assumption. You make an assumption that everyone that's speaking to you at that college has authority to guide you. But wait. As an adult learner, you are responsible for knowing what is on that contract when you sign into college and agree to financial aid and agree to take a class, whether you pay for it up front or whether you pay for it through financial aid loans that are going to come back and bite you later. That's for sure. So today, what I'd like to do is give tremendous kudos, again, like I said, to the universities, colleges, job training programs out there that are doing, most of them are doing what they are supposed to do. They are helping students with disabilities get through college. They're giving them the accommodations they need. And I'm going to talk a little bit about accommodations and what kind of accommodations people can ask for when they're applying to certain programs. But most importantly today, we have a number of students that are coming online that will be discussing this discrimination of disabled students and student loans that they have. It's focused on financial aid issues and the lack of accommodations that were promised to them at admission. Several students and veterans and teachers and all the supporters of White Apple Institute. Can't forget White Apple Institute. It is the White Apple Institute sponsors the Student to Teacher radio show. And we hope that the students will lead the discussion about how they've been denied completion of their educational goals because they feel that discrimination has taken place and that discrimination is related to their disability. And most of the deficits, I want everyone to understand that as we're talking about this, and this goes for our student veterans out there too. As you know, I'm a veteran, and one of the things that I did while I was in the Army is I helped veterans with learning disabilities to get through the vocational training programs there. And I want you to know that we see the deficits mostly in math, reading, and writing classes. And most of the time, students with any kind of challenge, emotional or learning disability, will have to require retesting. They need to retest, sometimes 2 or 3 times, with accommodations. And those accommodations sometimes are extended test time, making sure that they get the appropriate break periods if needed, or someone to read the test. There's a lot of different ways that we can now test students and accommodate for their learning disabilities. Unfortunately, my friends, many students, adult learners, do not test with the appropriate accommodations. You see, there are some schools out there, and unfortunately teachers and staff members who may not be aware or sensitive enough to understand how it feels for an adult learner to have to admit that they just don't get it. And they need accommodations. And sometimes the adult learner doesn't know what accommodations they even need. So they either drop out or they're forced out, leaving them underemployed and burdened with student loan debt. Now, that's a sad situation when you think about it. And I'm not here to tell you that it's just students with disabilities or diagnosed disabilities, because all of us have some kind of disability. Don't you agree? I mean, there's something that we're not able to do, and that's the dis in our ability. So let's not get really blown out of the water here with the term that, or the concept that everyone has disabilities, because we do. There's no 100% perfect person. But disabilities come in levels of severity. And so we're talking about those that have a severe enough mental health, learning disability, emotional challenge that really, truly inhibits them from learning and whacks or pushes down their motivation and their inspiration to follow their goals. Believe me, you know, I can tell you most assuredly anyone that has walked into a college campus or a job training program or a job, their first day, they're excited. They are so excited about being in that situation, about being in that classroom, about being in that registrar's office and signing up all those papers. They're ready to go. So what happens? What happens down the road as these students start going to the classroom every day, or going to the job training program, or going to work? And maybe the place that they dreamed of being at, and all of a sudden something happens. Now, what is the something that happens? Well, I guarantee you it's not one something. There are some things that happen, multiple things that happen. One, the major one, could be that they're having trouble learning. And when you're having trouble learning something as an adult learner, because we have so many academic and social challenges as adult learners, it's very difficult to tell someone, to admit that. So that's the first thing that starts to happen. And then, unfortunately, we have people that have financial hardships. Yes, that comes into. Because many adult learners, my friends, have children. Many of our student veterans out there have children, and they're taking care of their families. And so with that comes its own set of complications. That's right. Many, many social issues happen. So what I'd like you to do is just think about some of those social issues that can happen to someone. I run across them all the time when I'm dealing with adult learners. Sometimes it's just as simple as child care issues or transportation. But more than likely, and relationships. Don't let me forget that. Relationships play a big part in the motivational aspect of students going to school and staying in and succeeding. But most importantly, it lies inside the individual to find value in themselves and to find a sense of motivation and support from others. And that support comes in from looking at the teacher, from looking at the staff of the college, asking for help, asking for support from your family and friends. That's what's important. Now, how do you teach people something like that if they've been so withdrawn that they don't even know what to do when some things start happening in their life and they can't seem to stay motivated to stay in that program that they started a month ago or a few weeks ago, and they were so happy about starting? What happens to them, and what can we do to support them? You see, that's where White Apple Institute comes in, whiteappleinstitute.org. You check it out and make sure that if you're listening to the show for someone else, that you go into the website and not only look at what we do, but support the fact that we are working with these students. Most of the time, students cannot pay the money for the counseling and support that they receive, so we ask for donations. And so that's real important, that in any way you can, please support our work with them. We have a number of callers online this morning, and I'm hoping that some of the students that have been coming to me with some of the issues that I've discussed about discrimination of disabled students and student loan debt are online today. So let's see if we have, we conduct this radio show like a group session, so everyone is welcome to say what they need to say with courtesy to other people, and we welcome you. I'm looking at a 111. Hello, I have an unknown number here. This is Dr. Applewhite. Good morning. Okay. Just come in and speak whenever you wish to. Good morning, Dr. Applewhite. 634?
Yes,
634,
ma'am.
you there? Hi.
Yes. Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good this morning. And how are you?
Good. You want to share? If you want to, you can share your name. You don't have to share your name if you don't want to, but you can. Are you here to discuss your situation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
My name is.
Say your name?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Eunice Centrell.
Oh,
yes,
Eunice. You're part of the Student Advisory Council at White Apple
yes.
Institute. Thank you for calling in this morning.
You are welcome.
I thought I recognized your voice. Glad you're there. Okay.
Thank you.
And then we have another caller at 363. Good morning. Good morning, 363. Okay. And we have another one at 602-418. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. There you are. Okay. I was hoping that we a live voice on some of these phone calls. I know sometimes it's hard when people are calling in. It's hard for for you to say hello right away because you're not sure whether I'm speaking to you. But please feel free to discuss anything that jumps into your mind about discrimination of disabled students and student loan debt. And who do we have the pleasure of speaking to this morning?
This is Dr. Polnitz.
Dr. Polnitz, thank you. Dr. Polnitz, thank you for calling in this morning. This is one of the board of directors for White Apple Institute. We really appreciate you calling in, and I'm sure you'll have some great insight for the students and their plight in dealing with this discrimination issue that they're feeling, and maybe even give some suggestions about what they can do. We have a 491 number calling in. Good morning. This is Dr. Applewhite. 491. Hello? Okay. All right, let's get started here. Eunice, you have some things that you wanted to share this morning about your student loan issues.
Yes, ma'am, I do. Well, I started with Brown Mackey 2009, and I was going from my early child care classes. And at first I knew it was hard to start going to school with me being an adult, but I made a promise to my kids that I was going to finish school. I do have a disability, but I didn't let that stop me from going to school. And I did have teachers that was there with me, trying to help me every which way they could, and trying to, make sure that I passed my class. But I had a problem with my last two classes where it was my math. I'm not that good at taking tests. I have anxiety. And because I didn't pass my class, I did not graduate with my other students. All my friends that were supposed to graduate in 2012 of December. So I saw all my friends, they put it on Facebook, oh, we graduated, we got a certificate, and I was the only one that didn't graduate, and I think it was unfair what happened to me at school.
Eunice, one of the things that happens a lot with people when they're going to school, and I hear you very loudly, and earlier in the show, I don't know if you heard me explain that many of our adult learners have children, have families. Some of them they have to still support and financially support, which puts an additional burden on that adult learner. And then, of course, having to work. Were you working at the same time that you were going to school?
Yes, ma'am. I was working at Little Angel, that is in Tucson, Arizona, and I was a teacher at the time. So once class was over at 1, I had to be at work at 2. But sometime my supervisor, the owner, he wanted to understand that I had tutoring to do before I went to work. So I tried to do that, tried to go to my tutoring before I went to work. And then I would go to work. I didn't get off to 6 o'clock. And I had a lot of stuff that I had to do. I was in a relationship where my spouse had diabetes, and it was putting a toll on me being in school, going to work, and making sure everything's okay at home with that person. But I did it.
We applaud you, Eunice. We applaud you for pulling up your sleeves and doing what you've done. So, in other words, you've finished 3 years of college already.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you're saying that you got to this math class, and you mentioned another class, and you had some difficulties with it. So what happened? Tell us what happened with that so maybe some other listeners out there can gain something from your story.
Well, when I first started the college math class, I had a wonderful teacher that, she would do anything for her students so they could understand how to do the math problems, to get it. So when it's time for a test, we'd be ready and prepared for a test. And she understood that I had a learning disability, and she would come like early in the morning or stay late at night for me for like an hour or so to try to make me understand the creation of the problem so I could work on it and try to pass my class. I mean, she did this for the whole 8 weeks of the class. but I didn't pass the class, and I was upset, and I felt like I didn't know what to do. I felt like I didn't have enough support on that to finish my class. So that was my third strike, and our dean had told us that once you get a third strike, you're out of the school and you had to go somewhere else for help.
Okay. Now, every school has a disability resource office, okay?
Yes.
And so with that disability resource office, they're supposed to follow certain guidelines to help students with disabilities. And one of them, and I just want to, and I'm going to come right back to your story, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here with what exactly is available, okay? So I want to tell you guys, all of you out there, all of you listening to this broadcast, that there are laws in place in America. Now, this is only in America, because we have students listening from other parts of the country, especially in Africa, where students are struggling right now with learning disabilities trying to go to college. But in America, we have certain laws. One of them is the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the American Disabilities Act. And those laws, Eunice and other listeners out there, cover our disability issues and are supposed to enforce that schools follow the rules. Now, K through 12 is a whole different arena, okay? When you're in kindergarten through 12th grade, under a different set of laws, okay? And I have another show that addresses that. But right now, what I want to address today is how discrimination can happen, what you do with that when you have a disability and you're trying to get through to graduate, what steps you can take to correct that, okay? And the laws are the first thing. Now, we have that on site at whiteappleinstitute.org. You can find the link to Section 504 and the Americans with Disabilities Act so that you can at least have a reference when you're writing a complaint form against the school. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. I'd like to go back for a moment and see if Dr. Polnitz has anything to add to this before we go any further. Dr. Polnitz?
Yes, I do have just a little bit that I'd like to add to that. Is that I find it very frustrating, and it's more than frustrating, very nice, that our students are treated in such a way and they're trying so hard to get their education.
A little clearer, Dr. Polnitz, you're coming in with in a distance. Try that again.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, that is. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. What I was saying is that I find it very upsetting that our students with our disabilities are treated in such a manner when they're trying so hard to get their education. Every school does have a disabilities office, but one suggestion that I have is that this is kind of before we go into these classes, we need to look at the school and evaluate the school. I have always been in favor of the community colleges because they are government and they have got to stick to the rules, period. They lose a lot of their funding, and so they're very adamant about what they're doing with each and every student. I am not going to mention any names, but there is a college here in the Phoenix area that is actually developing programs that are designed to work with students with disabilities to get them different certificates in different areas. And the courses are designed for students with disabilities at a pace that is comparable to whatever the learning disability may be, so it's very individualized also.
Well, that's nice to know.
And that's a community college. And I just tout the community college as much as I can. However, if you run into difficulties with things like not being able to complete a then they have a disabilities office that you can go to, and they'll set you up again to take it as many times as you need to. And if that doesn't work,
is one of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, kudos to all of the really applause, celebration for all of the schools that are doing the right thing. They're doing the job. They're following the laws, and most of them are. Dr. Polnitz brings out a very good point, because when we talk about the community college, which is a direct link to the Department of Education, okay, when we talk about the issues of going to a community college or any other college versus a private college, I try to stray my students away from private colleges, not because private colleges are bad or not adequate, but because I really want them to do a more intense investigation of their disabled resource office, okay? And Eunice, I know in our conversations in the past have discussed that even the school that you went to had said that they had a disability resource office, and they did not, okay?
Right.
And so I know that one of the things I'm sure you want to encourage other students to do is to check that out, right?
Yes. They need to check it out before they even start going to the school to apply to go there.
And Dr. Polnitz, I appreciate that you brought out that there are a lot of programs out there right now that are helping adult learners to adjust to vocational programs and prepare for the workforce. And one of the things that I remember in a conversation with you, Dr. Polnitz, and this is real important for all of our listeners out there to hear, is that as adults, regardless of diagnosed disability or undiagnosed or whatever your severity of your learning disability is or your mental or emotional challenges, I want you to listen very carefully to this. You are still responsible. Now, that is hard for a lot of people to swallow because, again, they go into the college environment and their assumption is that the advisor is telling them exactly what they need to do, and they follow that. But that's what you do when you're in K through 12 and you lean on your parents to make the final decision. 12th grade, you are the one who's responsible. Do you agree, Dr. Polnitz?
Absolutely.
And sometimes
I agree that we are responsible, even though we've made the choice, and whether we have a disability or not, we still have to go along with the consequences of this.
That's right. And that goes for our student veterans out there, too. We come out of the service. We're trying to fit into the civilian life, the civilian lifestyle. It's very, very important, especially as a student veteran, because you are representing every other student veteran out there. So you've got to make sure that you understand the paperwork. And when you sign your name on that dotted line, that you are saying, I understand what classes you're advising me to take, suggesting that I take. But you are responsible for looking at whether or not that class fits into what you need. So that's very important, and that even goes for the issue of being underemployed. Remember, I mentioned that earlier today. Is that many times, and I'm sure Eunice and whoever else is on the line. Is there another student on the line with a similar problem?
Yeah. Tim's on here too.
Okay.
Marie's on here too.
Okay. Is Tim online?
Yes, ma'am.
Tim, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Good. Hello, Tim. I'm so glad you're joining us this morning. This is very important because I want people to hear your story, too. Tim is part of the Student Advisory Council for White Apple Institute, and he has some things that he wants to add. But one of the things that is really important is that we understand what underemployed means when you get out of any program. And Dr. Polnitz was one that can really, really reinforce this, is that there are many people who go to school and don't get out and get the job that they want. So it's not just discrimination against those with disabilities. There's many that land up into that particular category. However, I know it's more of a struggle for those of us who have disabilities and are trying to move forward into the work world and succeed there. I know it's more difficult. You understand that the world is looking at us as adults making decisions, and that's what we want them to do. We want true equality. Isn't that right, Dr. Polnitz? I think we lost Dr. Polnitz there. Okay, we lost her. She was traveling, but that's one of the conversations that we had. Tim, why don't you share with us a little bit of your story, because I don't want to run out of time here on the show.
Did you want?
Yes, you went
Yeah.
to a
Did
private...
you want me to go ahead and go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, my name is Tim Hinkle. What I ran into, I was out of work. When the economy went down, I was going back to school, hoping to qualify there for the school. Went through that, was promised all kinds of good things, like that you would get all of the help that you needed, tutoring and things like that. But as you got into the program, you find out exactly what they say and what they do is two different things, which is kind of what happened to me, in short.
When you look back now on the things that you've learned through White Apple Institute now, do you see where you could have done something a little differently when you investigated the school?
Oh yeah, you learn things there that you wish that you would have investigated more, or asked more questions, or just done more of a background check.
Okay.
On the
and one
on the
very
institution.
Thing that you and I have gone through together is the factor that you need documentation. So it's not enough.
Talk
about that for a minute. About the fact that just because somebody says we'll help you with tutoring and we have accommodations for you, we need to get that in writing.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Basically, like whatever school that you're thinking about going to, as good as their intentions may be in yours, I get it all down on paper, the date that you talked to the person, the name of the person, the date, of whatever was promised to you, whatever was said. Get as much of that as you can documented, just in case if you will need it down the line. Because if you do need it, you've got it, and it will just make things so much easier.
Right. Because one of the things that you want to do, you're signing your name on a dotted line. You are committing to paying for tuition, okay? And you are going to be in debt to the Department of Education, especially, and this is for the students that are here in America, United States Department of Education. You are going to be in debt to them because they are paying for your tuition. See, a lot of students don't understand that. Is that when you sign on that dotted line saying that the school can now ask for funds from the Department of Education, and so those funds come into them, the Department of Education assumes that you know what you're signing.
Yeah.
Okay? And so now they're going to come back and they're going to say, okay, well, you owe the Department of Education $20,000 or more, not the school. The school has already been paid by the Department of Education. I hope everybody understands that. Was that clear, Tim? Did I say that pretty clearly?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay. So what happened to you in the interest of time here? Tell us what happened to you that has caused you to feel that you are discriminated against and that you have this financial aid debt because of related to the discrimination of your disability.
Well, when I first started the process of going back to school, I told them that I would need help with a tutor, and was promised it, and whatever help that I would need to get the most out of the school. And as time went on, basically they reneged on getting you the ongoing help throughout classes. Mm-hmm. So you just didn't get the information that you would want to get out of the class to make the most out of it there when you would go out in the job market.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you end up going to school and just running up a big debt then.
Right. Okay. So when you got to the end of your program, what happened?
basically the tests were getting tougher, and I was having more difficulty. Didn't pass the major tests that you had to pass to graduate, and they basically I was told, okay, you failed, so you're out of school. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts.
And this was a federal loan that you took out with this. And from what I understand, and this is real important for our listeners out there to get, is that they did allow you to take the test.
Yeah, they would allow you to take the test, but when it would come out to actually give you the help to pass the test, that's when they were, they just wouldn't follow through with that.
Right. And many times the private schools do not have the appropriate accommodations. Many times they're not aware of what the appropriate accommodations are because they don't have a disability resource office. And that's why, as Dr. Polnis was alluding to earlier, that we really reinforce community college. And I know a lot of people say to me, oh, well, Professor, that's just too long. It takes longer to go to community college than a private school. But it actually is better in two different ways. Number one, you get great quality education, and you get the same program, and also the cost is much less than a private school. Okay, and another thing, the third thing, is that they have a strong disability resource office. Now, there are some times when people are not able to access disability resources, but I can tell you right now that most of the time the staff there are really willing to help. So I reinforce what Dr. Polnis was saying earlier about community college. But I know that there are students that still have problems with that. Well, Tim, what are you going to do now? What are the steps? Because we're going to start getting into the steps of how to resolve this, because that's what this show is about. The student-to-teacher show is, we can talk about all the things that are not going right in our lives and all the pressures that we go through. Here you are, I don't want you to tell your age necessarily unless you want to, but certainly are you under or over 40? Would you at least explain that?
Sadly to say that I am over 40. Actually, I'm 52.
Okay, and that's important for some of our listeners out there because a lot of times people are not aware that, when we're talking about adult learners, thank you, Tim, we're talking about adult learners, we're talking about people sometimes that are 35 to 55 to 65 years old. And many times trying to go to school, trying to get a second career going because maybe they have children still that they have to take care of. Maybe there are parents listening that are taking care of a disabled adult student and want some information. This is all so important for everyone to understand that there are challenges that have to be addressed, and let's talk about the resolution. Let's talk about how we're going to counteract some of the stuff that's happening. Tim, what have you done so far? Tell us about
actually, I had, with the Institute, I actually had been working on trying to document it as much as I could of what's taken place. Then try to work on a plan on what to do next to try to go, try to chip away at things to get to a resolution.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I know that we had to start with was documentation. Documentation is very important. Not only documentation of the circumstances that you had to undergo in order to get through school, but also documentation of disability. And that's really, sometimes that's very hard for many of the students out there because they don't have the appropriate documentation, especially depending on the age that they're at, because, it's been a long time since they've been in school.
Well, I know, and like so with me, it takes a long time to get the documentation, and you're kind of not used to asking for help. So part of the thing is just getting past your ego that it's not bad to ask for help, then to get the help, then to follow through with things.
Yes, that's right. It becomes very difficult, but I'll tell you what, you've done it. You're working on it, and we appreciate you. We applaud you for that. Eunice, in addition to what Tim is talking about, what he's doing, as as far as documenting and making sure that he had his assessments done so that he could actually make out a legal document, a complaint form against the school and ask them for retesting. You've done something very similar to that, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
I have.
Tell us a little bit about what happened when you asked them to give you a retest and what you're doing now with your documentation.
Well, I went back up to Brown Mackey, and I did go to our dean. I asked him would I be able to go back into the school so I could finish the 2 classes that I needed, my college class and science class for early child care. He said no. He said I had to go to Pima College in Tucson, and I went up there, and they had explained to me that I could not just take one class, the 2 classes that I needed. I had to take all my classes all over again, and I was not going to go ahead and do that because I'm already far enough in my education where I need on 2 classes to get my associates. So
Okay.
if it wasn't for Timothy, I would not know about Upper White Institute.
Okay. And have you been able to help with counseling sessions?
No, ma'am, and I think that's one of the problems that I'm having because I'm still stressed out for not graduating with my friends, and I know I should have graduated because I got so many awards from Brown Mackey for all the good work I did.
Right, right. But you have received some counseling from White Apple Institute since all of this has happened?
Yes, ma'am. I've been you helped me a lot. You helped me see that it's a future that I can finish school and I can go ahead and get my associate and keep my head straight.
And you will. You will.
Yes, ma'am.
There are
I'm
some
very
steps though we have to go through. And before we leave you, Eunice, I haven't been able to get to everybody online this morning. We have another caller coming in at 7:08. Good morning. This is Dr. Applewhite. 7:08. Are you there? Okay. And we have another caller.
491. Dr. Applewhite.
Okay.
491.
Yes.
This is
good morning.
Professor Astete, Consuelo
Yes.
Astete, and
Hello there.
I have to congratulate everyone involved in this. This is a superb show that we're listening to, because we're listening to actual people that are trying to resolve their problems, and it's very educational. I'm learning a lot just listening to all this that is happening, and also I am very happy that we're being able to help people as an institute. Thank you so much for the show this morning.
Well, thank you, Professor Estete. I appreciate that. Any comments that you have regarding discrimination issues, please feel free to jump in and discuss that. We're waiting right now because I've been mentioning a lot about student veterans, too, and we're waiting right now for Operation Veterans Promise, one of our sponsors, to come in and discuss issues that they're doing with student loan debt for some of our veterans. So we hope that they join us before the show ends. But let's talk for a minute about some of the things that we can do. I believe it's Eunice, and I don't know if there are any other students online. I'm going to check the chat line. Oh, yes, there is one other student on the chat line right now that has written in, and basically the same type of situation. Here's what I'd like you to do. Tell us right now why you are so, when you talk about anxiety and what you're going through about not graduating, tell us about your employment issues real quickly and your financial aid loan debt and what you're facing because you have not been able to get the accommodations to retest. Tim, you want to take that away?
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, sure, you get the disappointment of not graduating. You get a little bit of the blues and depression, but then you also kind of get hit. Well, now I owe some $20,000 in debt.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a tough pill to answer.
Mhm. Now you know that there are other people that are in debt also with their student
Oh yeah.
loans. What makes what makes the adult learner with disability that's been discriminated against, what makes you so different? Why should we listen? Why should people listen to you and help you?
Well, possibly it's kind of like if you help the one person, that person can help the next. You know, if you kind of take care of the problem instead of just turning a blind eye to it, it's going to grow.
And that's a good point, turning a blind eye to it, because that's one of the things that I think from many, many years ago, when I first got involved in students having these tremendous loans and not being able to pay them back because they could not finish the courses because of their learning disability. And I remember a young lady, she was about 30 years old, educably mentally retarded, EMR we classify her as, which just means on an intelligence level that she was a little lower than the standard. But, however, she couldn't handle the pressure. She had children, she had a job, and she could not handle the pressure of going to school, especially being signed up as a respiratory therapist. And unfortunately, that young lady is suffering from a lot of depression because she signed a paper that indebted her to $30,000 in student loans, and she only attended the class for 6 weeks. And you see, from that, we get into this feeling of advocacy, like you said. You know, I mean, we can't let other people just do this. We have to help other people so that they can understand that they should not sign on that dotted line unless they know exactly what they're doing. And how do we counteract that? How do we stop that? That's what I want you guys to think about today.
Professor
yes.
Applewhite,
yes.
This is Loretta Young.
Oh,
Can
Lisa,
I come?
yes. Thank you.
In regard
How are you?
to employment, I feel that we're at a disadvantage. We already know we're at a disadvantage. Okay, so who's gonna hire us? And if they know we have a disability, or if our disability is prevalent, they can see it. Most employers, do they really want to deal with it? Or are they looking at more money, insurance issues, blase, blase? You go to Voc Rehab, you go to all these agencies that are supposed to be able to assist those with disabilities, and they put you on a waiting list, or they tell you it's going to be difficult, it's probably going to be a while, they do all these assessments, and you're still waiting. You have your ticket to work. You can't use it. Why? Because you still can't get employment. I mean, I've been waiting since, 2009? I still haven't been able to use my ticket to work. So you talk about frustration, you go to school. What am I going to school for? Am I going to be able to get a job? It doesn't look like it because I'm still waiting. So frustration, you can't even imagine frustration. I am so frustrated that I can't even put words to the frustration level that I'm at. I can't even put a number to it.
And I think that that's one of the reasons why you actually came to White Apple Institute, is because just like many of our adult learners come in because they are so frustrated about the situation, and they need some support in order to go forward, because they cannot seem to get over that lack of motivation and the depression that they're feeling. So I appreciate you. I hope that you've been able to get some help at the Institute at this point.
But when you get the door shut in your face so many times, when you go to the Disability Resource Center and you've given them documentation of your disabilities, they know what your disabilities are, and you tell them you need accommodations. Well, what is it that you want me to do for you? They're asking me what I want for them to do for me. They already know what I want. I've told them what I needed. So why are they still asking me? You know, and I'm supposed to tell them, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. And then when you do, well, we can't do that. You know, it's out of our hands. There's other costs involved if you want to get the resources that you need, such as Dragon Natural Speaking software to help you, and other things that you need. So does the Resource Center actually help you? In some ways, yes, very minimal ways. A note taker, a recorder, extra time on your test. Very minute things. The things that really, really can help you, you don't get, like Tim said, tutoring. Science class, I've been told more than once, we don't have any tutors available to help you. You're just out of luck.
You are an adult learner who's had some challenges yourself, and we don't have, we're almost out of time here, but I do want to get to you, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for Operation Veterans Promise to come on and talk about student veterans and what we can do to resolve some of these issues.
Some of the obstacles.
Tell us, now you have children yourself. You're still struggling to go to school, and you've had some challenges with discrimination issues.
But my disabilities happen later in life. My children are grown, but I've raised children with disabilities, and I know, and I've had to represent my children myself, cost and other things. So yes, I know what it entails, and unless you're dealing with it and going through it, you're talking about people sticking together and helping. Unless you really are involved directly, most people don't want to get involved. Most people don't get involved. And when they even are aware of it, they still, if it's not affecting them, out of sight, out of mind.
Yes,
you might as well.
Yes, and Larita, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And it looks like we're going to have to do another show on this because there's so much information that needs to be put out there. So I believe that we're going to have to do a part 2 on this on our next Saturday. So please stand by with more information that you can share on some of the tips that you may have come up with through working with White Apple Institute on how to help some of these students with their issues. Without further ado, I want to bring on our Operation Veterans Promise to help me out with some of the things that we can, some of the resolutions that we can look at as far as helping those with student loans. 708, are you there?
Good morning, Dr. Harper White. How are you?
How are you? And this is Greg or Michael?
Michael.
Michael. Good morning, Michael.
Well,
Michael,
I was listening to the show.
Okay.
And understand some of the problems and the frustrations, and it's not something we haven't seen before. We see it quite often in the military world, as well as that with the veterans. That said, if you have an opportunity to visit if your listeners have an opportunity to visit Operation Veterans Promise, we actually have an organization that works with debt management and or relief for primarily with our organization's military folks, but they do have a civilian component. They're more than welcome to visit the site, get in contact with the organization, fill out the identification card or the subscription card so that we'll know that they're communicating with them in case there's any questions or follow-up. And we're available by phone or by email for questions or comments regarding the program as well.
Okay. And one of the things that I want everyone to understand is that Operation Veterans Promise is very, very much involved with supporting the work of White Apple Institute and the student veterans that we have that we're working with so that they can succeed in college and the workforce, especially with disabilities. And we really appreciate your input, Michael, this morning on the show. And I'm sure that you'll agree with me that as we look at resolution, how we can resolve some of these things, that the number one thing that people have to do is, one, explore, investigate thoroughly the school that you're going to. Make sure that they have a disability resource office. Make sure you're in contact with that office. Now, of course, we have a student that said that she contacted them and let them know everything and presented all the paperwork and still didn't get the resolve that she wanted. But at least that's the first step. And then the second...
And here's what...
I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Well,
Please.
One of the other things they can do with that process is reach out to students at that particular campus that fall into the same category, that have disabilities, and if known, similar disabilities, to compare what the treatment of that individual student is viewing and receiving versus what's being told to them in the registrations office.
Right, exactly. Kind of like a double check on what's happening. Just go back and find out if anybody else is having those problems. And that's what we want people to do with this show. That's why we're having this radio show today, that we want people to listen to it and understand. Go ahead.
Well, and then another adjunct to that would be a central location in which to send that type of information, someone to sponsor a website where students with disabilities can go and speak both sides of the issue, the good things that are happening at the university in which they belong, and if unfortunate, the mishaps that happen. And
yes.
If there again, courses of action that led to resolutions or that are still in process, so that students who are looking at a university get a better window into what's happening at the university. And even if their situation isn't perfect as they're going in, they know that the university and the students that are already there are already working on issues which lead to resolutions that may ease their time at the university, maybe a little bit further into the program.
Very good. And know the laws. Know the laws. Know what protects you, okay? Know what protects you against discrimination, what discrimination actually is, so that you're clear on when you start documenting what has happened to you, that you're using part of the laws, and that's one of the things that we're doing with the students that we have right now is it's educating them on the laws so that they can make the proper documentation happen and submit it to the right agencies. Now, so far, and I want to put this out there, we're still looking for people who can volunteer their time, especially professionals in the legal field and in the educational field that will come on board and help some of these students. This is just a few of the students that we're working with right now at White Apple Institute, and we encourage them to keep rolling up your sleeves, keep going with this. You're going to make it. When I say make it now, let's clarify that. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's going to be a magic wand wave and you're going to be able to go back and get your degrees. It means that sometimes, because of the time frames and the red tape, the bureaucracy that we have to go through to file complaints, that you may be at a disadvantage in time. But that doesn't mean that you give up, and that's why we're here to support you. So we appreciate you. And, Laretha, it's real important that you discuss, right now you're running a chat line for the Student Advisory Council. And,
yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
We've started a Student Advisory Committee with White Apple Institute, which we will have conference calls. I think it's about every other week or every week, and we would kind of discuss and kind of give each other support and come up with suggestions as to how we can reach out and bring in others to help them as well.
Right. And that's a very, very worthy cause, and thank you so much for being a lead in that. That just like Tim was saying earlier, that you're helping others to understand. Is that right, Tim?
Yes.
Right, and that's the key, because and Eunice, you're stuck too, right? You're stuck too, but you're reaching out and helping other people, aren't you?
Yes.
And we appreciate you being on the show today to share that with us. But remember, just like Michael said at Operation Veterans Promise, there are some ways that you can discuss or address your student loan debt. One of them is on his website right now, operationveteranspromise.com or .com or .org, Michael? I'm sorry, I lost that.
It's
okay.
.org, ma'am.
It's .org, operationveteranspromise.org. Okay, and the other part of that, with less than about a minute to go here, we talked about, and thank you, Michael, for bringing that out, about investigating, about knowing the law, about documenting, and most importantly, that you keep your spirits up high, okay? Mm-hmm. Do not give up. Never, ever, ever give up on your dream, because it's important to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Professor Applewhite, even though I'm aware of the law under the ADA, okay, but enforcing it is another thing. It looks good in writing, but, enforcing it, that's the key.
Yes. And the key now is through this process, and this goes for all our student veterans out there too, through the process, it's important that we stay positive and know that there are laws do change. We may not be able to change the hearts, as Martin Luther King said, but we can. But it takes all of us together to make that happen.
Yeah.
So please, with us as we continue, please contact whiteappleinstitute.org and all of our sponsors, Operation Veterans Promise and Dr. Jamila Williams and her Travel with Disabilities concept. And as we close our show, I wish you much love and peace. And as I said before, we will continue this. As we close with Wes Ricks of Two Worlds, I want you to focus on meditating to help